People have lost that connection between death and life. Death is something to be feared and to be put over here.
Yeah.
Not to be seen as an inevitable thing, and when it comes, we don't fight or rail against it. We're all spiritual beings. It's how do we connect that spiritual element of ourselves? Do we connect it through an organised religion? How do we do it?
Hello and welcome to Death, a Changing Industry. Today we have the great pleasure to welcome the Reverend Garry Ward in his wonderful church in Claverley. Gary, thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming.
No, fantastic to be here and a real privilege, and actually doing it here as well. It really just creates that connection of like while we're having this conversation.
It's a nice peaceful place to be.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah. Interestingly, you were talked about on one of our previous episodes with Grace Jevons.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So civil celebrant Grace Jevons. So something that I spoke about with Grace Jevons about you is about how you are integrated, in my opinion, in your community. But that's based on the things that you do. So can you talk about the things that you do in your community, why that's important, and do you think that helps as well?
A lot of clergy now are very different to they were years ago, and the problem is a lot of society still sees the vicar as the person that was, years and years ago, as a person that was in the community but wasn't part of the community, always stood slightly on the outside. But now I think in the modern church and the way I think about it, and I don't always know what other people think. The way I think about it is you become part of the whole community.
Yeah.
So the church is a community in itself, but you can't be a church community which is separate from the village community in this sense. So to me, the two need to go hand in hand and almost, definitely become one. And so, I join in anything and everything that's going on as much, I'll go in the pub and I'll have a pint. I've even helped out behind the bar. We all know that. I help out behind the bar now and again when things are needed. I do that as a voluntary thing, but I also do it because it connects me with people.
Yeah.
And I'll sit in the pub, probably after this, because I've had a heavy day, I might go and have a pint on the way home.
Yeah.
And there'll be people in there and I'll have a chat with them. Then somebody else will come in and have a chat with them. Yeah. And I'm known more in the village from doing those sort of things, or playing indoor bowls, or, going to the dues that they have, being part of the school, being a governor at the school, all those sort of things, help you to become a part of the whole community. And to be honest, I'm not blowing my own trumpet. There aren't many people in this village who don't know who I am.
But from a real basic point then, the person in the pub that gets to know you, they might not be connected to a church. And I know you say it shouldn't be about an individual, it should be about an organisation you're going there for. But the fact that they feel comfortable with you, they're going to come to the church.
And that's part of pastoring.
Yeah.
Part of pastoring is nurturing people, being a part of people, talking football with them, talking cars with them, talking about their family, talking about that. And then at some point, inevitably it happens, they'll say, what about faith?
Yeah.
Maybe not in direct terms like that, or they'll say, my mother died and I'm really not sure how I feel about that, and it could be 20 years on. And there's still things I think about. Or, I went and I saw something absolutely amazing and I felt really lifted by that. Could that be God? Yeah. And you can get into these conversations, and it doesn't necessarily end up with extra bums on pews on a Sunday, but there is a connection there.
Yeah.
Being part of the community and I've got a funeral a week on Monday. The guy's 101 and I've known him since I've been here, D-Day veteran. I got on really well with him. I used to go and see him, and we've met in the pub. I'd buy him a pint and that, I'll buy you a pint, you deserve a pint for what you've done for us,
Yeah.
And I'm doing his funeral week on Monday and seeing his family, and it's a massive privilege to do something like that.
Yeah.
And the joy of being in a small community like that is you do connect.
Yeah.
My last parish was 26,000 people, and more often than not, you didn't know the person you were doing a funeral for, doing a wedding for, doing a christening for. But that doesn't mean to say you can't make them feel welcome, settled, comfortable, and go away thinking that experience was positive.
Yeah.
And also I believe as well, because people will say to me, well, don't you get fed up of people sort of using the church? You know, they use it for a wedding, they use it for a christening, they use it for a funeral, but you won't see them again.
Yeah.
And I say, but you don't know what the Holy Spirit's doing. You don't know what the Holy Spirit's doing in here. And 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that little experience and that Holy Spirit bit that they lodged and took away with them, or here, wherever you want to say it, suddenly flourishes, and they think, yes, that is a place for me.
And I see the value and how the church supports people after a funeral service as well.
Yeah.
So I go to the service for the departed every Christmas in Bridge North.
Yeah.
And you see that network and community and connection. People are together who've also suffered losses. And it's really important.
And a lot of churches will do, every year they'll do a memorial and invite people back.
Yeah.
You might some years get loads of people come back. Some years you might only get 2 or 3 people come back. But
it's there. It's there as well.
You write to the individuals and you say, you know, it's as part of this year, we'd like to invite you to come for a memorial service, light a candle, and you know, come and have a chat with us and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you leave it up to them then.
Yeah.
You know, my training incumbent, he always said to me, you know, you've got to do a funeral and then the day after you go and see them. And I was like, no, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
And I agree with what he was saying, but I don't agree that you do it the next day.
The principle's correct, but it's too soon.
But at some point later on, you'll go and see them and you'll say, how are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, is there anything I can do? Is there anything we, the church, can support you with? Anything personally I can support you with practically or whatever? Because not only are you, I've got the cure of souls for this parish, they're not only my parishioners, they're my neighbours.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And some of them have become good friends.
So we spoke before this interview about the decline in religion now in England and Wales. The census now is under half of people are religious now, Christian. Firstly, why is that the case? And then secondly, regarding funeral services, why is there a decline? And also, to answer that question as well, what changes have you seen in your 20 years as a vicar? What's happened?
I think the biggest change I've seen in 20 years as a vicar is the whole idea of death has changed in society itself. We've spoken about this before. People no longer talk about, oh, so-and-so's died, it's so-and-so's passed away.
Yeah.
And so this whole idea of death and dying is different. I also see a lot of people will want to keep hold of their loved ones for the very last second that they can. Whereas years ago, you know, you'd come to a stop and you think, right, they just slip away now.
Yeah.
So there's this.
Why?
I don't know whether it's a medical intervention thing that, you know, we've got to keep them alive at all costs, or it's a fact that we've lost, there's a disjoint between living and dead and what's going on after.
Yeah.
Because the church offers a hope of what happens after through Jesus' death and resurrection. We know that there is a place we go. We don't know what the place is like. We don't know what form we will take, but we know there is someone through faith somewhere where we go. And I think as faith, not faith has declined, but as the sort of, society becomes more secular, the idea of faith and spirituality gets squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And I think people have lost that connection between death and life.
Yeah.
Death is something to be feared and to be put over here.
Yeah.
Not to be seen as, you know, an inevitable thing. And when it comes, we don't greet it, but we don't fight or rail against it. You know, it happens.
So we're saying then that religion is being religious makes us think about our own mortality.
Split it up.
To a certain extent.
No, split it up. You've got faith and you've got religion.
Okay.
Faith is your connection to God.
Yeah.
And that can be as perfect and as beautiful as you want. Or as perfect and beautiful as you allow that relationship to be. That's between you and God. Religion is what human beings have put a structure on to try and make sense of that relationship.
Okay.
And that's where the difficulties come, because we're flawed. We're not perfect. You know, we're not God. We don't know what it's all about. But we try and put these structures on. And quite often we get it wrong.
Yeah.
And I think over the past 20 years, society have been, I mean, a lot longer than 20 years, but the 20 years that I've been in it, society have become a more self-thinking, and almost selfish-like. So therefore, they don't necessarily follow the crowd. So people don't come to church because somebody else comes to church. They decide for themselves whether they come to church.
Yeah.
They don't do things because everybody else does things. They do them because they want to do things.
Yeah.
There are still, you know, places that are thriving. You know, football is probably the biggest religion going at the moment. But I think society tells people now that they have the right to make their own decisions. They are, you know, holders of their own destiny. They could do whatever they want, you know, from the lowest can become, you know, you can bring yourself up through education, working hard, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And you don't have to follow the crowd. You don't have to go to church if you don't want to. And actually, there then becomes this loss of connection with something spiritual.
Yeah.
We are spiritual beings. I'm not saying we're not spiritual beings. We're all very spiritual beings. And you'll find that a lot of people are searching for something and searching for something all their life. But people don't go to church as youngsters because their parents didn't. We're in like third and fourth generation of people that didn't go regularly to church.
Yeah.
And in some ways that's good, because what we've actually got is people that in church that want to be in church. They're not in church because mum and dad or granny said they've got to be in church.
It's a choice to be here.
And it's a choice. But I think we've taken that choice in a lot of things in life one step a little bit too far. And instead of supporting each other and being there for each other, we as society tend to think, I can do it on my own.
Yeah.
I can do it. And it's a weakness to ask for support. It's a weakness to show that I am vulnerable.
Yeah.
When actually it isn't. And that's what makes good community.
Yeah.
You look after the vulnerable in your community. And the thing is, you can be vulnerable for a long time or a short time. You know, you have something happen in your life, somebody dies, you have that trauma, that grief, you're very vulnerable at that point. But over the weeks and the months, you slowly come out of that vulnerability and you get back to being a little bit more like your old self. You're never the same person because life's changed. Your mum's gone, your dad's gone, your auntie's gone, whatever. Or even your children, if you're, you know, God forbid that happens, but it does happen.
Yeah.
And you know, you're never the same person, but you come out of that vulnerability. Then what you want is support.
Yeah.
But we do it with bravado. I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm fine. And actually, you probably go behind the front door and burst into tears. But I'm fine.
Do you think that people in the past came to church as well who weren't that religious, but coming here gave them a sense of community?
Yeah, I think that there are probably quite a few people that did that.
Yeah.
I think it was something that was done, and you were expected to go. You're expected to go to Sunday school, give your parents an afternoon off on a Sunday.
Yeah.
You were expected to maybe join the choir or do something like that, especially in communities like this. And you were a part of the church. And I think over time that sort of dropped away. Sunday schools are very hit and miss now because parents don't insist that their children go to Sunday school. And I think that's right, they shouldn't insist. I think the problem is people aren't brought up to know the stories, which is another problem.
Yeah.
You come to church, you gain faith from listening to the stories, from listening to people's experiences. If you're not listening to those stories and you're not listening to those experiences, how on earth can you connect with a church or with other people of faith?
And also death. And I think as well,
Yep.
what I've been doing the last 3 years in Parliament, I think it's highlighted to me when I come to church for a funeral service, when we sing hymns, and it has mention of death in the hymns. You know, 20 years ago, it was all around us.
It was, yeah.
But now, because there is less of that communication around society now, it highlights to me why there is such a need to have these conversations.
And if you want to look at a big example of the way people were in a community, and we're probably more blindly in a community than we are now, is you're an ex-military man. World War I, World War II, men signed up in their droves and they went and they were killed in their thousands. But that was the way it was. We grieved and we mourned the whole nation, but it was the way it was. You skip forward to like Afghanistan now, and what have we lost? 300 and something soldiers?
Yeah.
And it's an absolute tragedy, and it shouldn't happen. But society all of a sudden has gone, whoa, this shouldn't happen. We're going to protest about this. We're going to try and stop this from happening. Whereas 80 years ago, people just went.
Yeah.
They were told to go, and they went.
There's an element of pride as well going. You know, if
it
your
was.
kids or family
was.
didn't go, it brings shame on the family.
Bring on shame on the family,
Yeah,
and it's
our values almost, our institutions.
our whole values towards our institutions, our whole value and our whole thinking about our government is different.
Yeah.
You know, they were the government, they were in charge.
And simple respect.
Yeah, we had respect for them. We might not agree with what they were doing, but we had respect for them. And the people that we elected were fairly solid people.
Yeah.
They were elected for the people that they represented, and they worked for the good of their constituencies and for the country as a whole. What we tend to see now is a lot of, particularly with the government that's gone, and I don't think I'm working out of turn by saying there's a lot of people there for their own self-interest.
Yeah. There's not people there. There hasn't been people there who have inspired.
No, they don't inspire because they're not these sort of. You can't put your faith in this solid figure of a person when they're buffooning about.
Yeah.
And you know, Boris. You might be a fan of Boris, but to me, Boris was never a statesman.
No.
And I couldn't respect Boris Johnson because he was just a figure of fun.
The people who liked him, I was about to say that. People who liked him, you know, he was a fun guy. But you don't want a fun guy to take us to war.
And the problem is now, we look at the person that's leading the party.
Yeah.
So if you've got somebody that's very charismatic, the chances are they're going to win over the people. It doesn't matter what their policies are, it doesn't matter what their manifesto says, they're going to win over.
Can't take you back though. Isn't this very similar to a previous conversation about the church?
Yeah. But what you've got in the last election, it wasn't like that because, let's face it, both candidates were fairly bland.
Yeah.
So people started to look about what they stood for.
Yeah.
And what they could do for them.
I'd agree.
So you had a completely different election on that side. And the church, you're right, the church is very much like that. The church, the person at the front is not was the sort of dogmatic leader. The vicar was in charge of the church, and not the church. You know, your church wardens do all the usual bit, but the vicar was in charge of the worship, the prayer,
delivery.
Everything was, and the pastoral care in the village was done through the vicar, and the vicar held a sort of. He was up on a pedestal almost. There was a respect there. Now, in society, you recognise that, yes, that is your role, you are the reverend, but you've got to earn that respect.
Yeah.
It doesn't come automatically because you are the vicar.
Yeah.
It means that you can connect quicker with people. Like, it'd be harder for me to come into this village as somebody that, works locally as in industry or something, and then I'm trying to connect with people in the village. When you come to a village as a vicar, you automatically know people very quickly. But it doesn't mean to say they respect you quickly. You've got to build that. There's no sort of, he's the vicar, therefore I must.
And that's what I was saying about what you do with that integration, why it is so important. But I believe that integration is required on every level, from a village to a town to a city to a country.
It is. And even if you're in a parish of 26,000 people, you can still be out and about and be seen.
Of course you can.
Everybody might not necessarily know your name or where you're from, but they can see that you are doing what you're doing.
It's acts of intent.
And
that's what it is.
And it's living a gospel life that Jesus wants us to live by our actions and by who we are, not by preaching.
100%.
Not by, trying to force the Bible on people.
Yeah.
You use the Bible as your inspiration for life. You use the Gospels that Jesus said for your inspiration for life. And then you take that out.
Yeah.
And people then may say, why are you doing this? And I'm saying, because my faith tells me to do this through what Jesus did, how Jesus lived. And my faith does that. And then people go, oh, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And you start to engage again in conversations, in different relationships.
Yeah.
And you could do that anywhere. It doesn't have to be.
I totally
it
agree.
works better in small villages because you connect quicker.
Yeah.
But you can still do it in a huge parish.
Any scale.
You can be seen up the high street doing your shopping.
Yeah.
You can be seen at the local football ground cheering the local team on. Not the Molyneux, but your local teams and that sort of thing. And you can just be around.
Yeah. It's that intent, the acts of intent.
And that tells a lot by, doing that. And that makes a massive difference. And then when people do need you for a funeral, or they do want to come and have a wedding, they know who they've come to see. Oh, you're the bloke that we see up in the village. We're the bloke that we see up in the town. Oh, you're the bloke. Oh, I've seen you before doing this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And you've already got that connection because they already see who you are.
Hey guys, thank you for watching the video so far. I hope you're really enjoying it. Please click the thumbs up on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, a huge thank you to our sponsors. Their details are found in the video description just below. Thank you so much. Interestingly, you might have the answer to this. For a wedding, when it's a civil wedding, you can't incorporate any religion.
No, you can't.
So why can you do it for a wedding? Why aren't you allowed to have any religious content for a wedding, but you are for a funeral?
I think it's to do with the legal side of registration. I would,
contract.
Yeah, contract, and they are. Whereas funerals are very similar wherever you go. And like you say, civil celebrants will do pretty much the same funeral as we, with less religious elements in it. A wedding, you're having it as a church wedding or a non-church wedding, and there is a very defined line there. And a non-church wedding is no religion whatsoever, or and it's like if you want to get married and you're not part of a church that can do weddings, like the Church of England can do weddings. If it's like an Islamic wedding or a Jewish wedding or something like that, you have to have that civil part first, and then you can do the religious after.
Okay.
But you've got to do that to be registered as married.
Okay.
But it's not recognised as the religion of the country, therefore.
Yeah. Okay.
You can't do it. You can't be the registrar in that sense, like we're the registrar in this sense.
Okay.
But there is a definitely defining line, and I think it's a legal thing.
Yeah.
That you keep that completely non-religious. If you want a religious wedding, you go to a place that will do it for you.
So what does the church do then to change of what's happening, the result of what's going on? What can the church do to counteract it, to bring it back to what it was? Or is it just that's the way it is now?
I don't think you'll ever bring it back to what it was, because I think there were, years ago, people thought they'd got to have a vicar. They didn't realise that, Uncle Bob could do it. There was this, it was almost like mythical that the vicar had got to do the funeral. And then as people realised that that's not the case, some people stopped having the vicar.
Yeah.
A lot of people still did, because that's the way it was, but a lot of people stopped having the vicar. So I don't think you'll ever get back to us doing everything.
Yeah.
I think what we've talked about already is the thing that hits on it, is being a part of the community and taking the church out to the community. The thing is, this isn't the church. This is the church building.
Yeah.
Us as Christians out in the community is the church.
Yeah.
And that's how you get the church to connect with people, by being that person out there.
Yeah.
Living with Christian values. You haven't got to sort of preach to people, but what you'll find is if people say, well, why are you doing this? You'll say, well, my faith is the vehicle in which I do this. My faith gives me this. And I realise that by doing this, I'm doing the right thing for God and for my faith. I can walk up the road and I can walk with my head down, dog collar on, head down, not talk to anybody, because I'm not feeling it that day. But you've got to head up.
Yeah.
And you've got to, morning.
Interact.
Good morning. How are you? How's your mum doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. How's little Johnny? Has he got over his cold? Is he back at school? Oh, that's great. It's that sort of thing. And it's those little things that grow into the relationships that allow you then to share what is faith. And people can then think, oh, I quite like that. I like why you're doing that. And I think, because as I said before, we're all spiritual beings.
Yeah.
But it's how do we connect that spiritual element of ourselves? Do we connect it through an organised religion? Do we do it through alternative religions? Do we do it through New Age culture? How do we do it? Or do we do it through science?
Yeah.
People can get a spiritual connection through science.
Yeah.
The wonders of the universe, the thing. Now, I don't think science and religion are two separate things. I think they work very well together. And I'm as fascinated about the new sort of ideas in physics and astrophysics and everything as anybody else.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's incompatible with my faith and my religious life,
Yeah.
Being clergy. So I think we're all spiritual beings. And I think if we interact together on that very relational level, then actually that spirituality can connect and that faith can grow. And people will, and I've known people come to church because they've had a wonderful experience at a funeral. It's been a positive experience for them. It's been a sad thing, yes, and it's been full of grief, but it's also been very positive.
Yeah.
And people think, well, if that's positive, and what this person's saying is very positive,
Yeah.
I might see what that's about.
Yeah.
And I've had people come
I can
here
believe it. I can believe it.
to come and see. They might not come every week,
Yeah.
but every couple of months you might see them. They come in and have I just thought I'd come and see you and enjoy the service.
Yeah.
And that does happen.
Yeah.
But it's making that connection. It's making that initial connection as two human beings. It's then maintaining that connection as two human beings or a group of human beings. And then it's taking that step further to enhance that relationship to something more, which is a spiritual or a faith connection.
So Garry,
But I also believe, I can teach people, what Jesus wants for us, and I can support people, and I can tell people how Jesus works in my life. I can be an example of Jesus in my life. I'm going to get it wrong. Don't get me wrong. I make big mistakes. We all do. God forgives us for that. But at the end of the day, it's up to that person to connect with God.
This is my next question then for you, what you just said there. We've highlighted about society, the shifts in society, and if it's the correct word, becoming more of a selfish society, potentially. But but the work that you do about creating connection and what you do to show that intent to people, how do we live better lives as a society, as individuals? That's a big question for us all now. Mental welfare, mental health, mental fitness, whatever you want to call it, is on the decline in the UK.
Yeah.
What are we doing wrong, and what do we need to do to live healthier, happier lives?
We've lost the old sense of community. We've lost the old sense of neighbourliness. A lot of people now will say, I don't know who lives next door to me, or years ago, when I was a kid, everybody in the street knew who everybody was. And if you got a problem, you could go and knock on the next door neighbour or somebody across the road and you say, can you give me a hand? I'm stuck.
Yeah.
You've got to make those relationships to make that work. And if you've got those relationships, then, you know, you've got somewhere to go when there's a problem. You can speak to people. You can get support off people. If you've not got that support because you live in a street where nobody speaks to each other, you don't even know who your next door neighbour is, when something happens to you, it's a very lonely place.
Yeah.
And once that's a very lonely place, that's when it impacts on your mental health.
Yeah.
That's when things start to break down because you've got nowhere to go. You could go for professional support, you know, you could get support off yourself if it's something to do with death or me even, but unless you got some kind of support network, however loose that may be, then we're going to have these serious problems with mental health problems and people having lots of troubles because they can't connect. We're going to have a lot of socially awkward people. There's going to be a lot of sociological problems, and I think young people are put under so much pressure by things like social media, how to conform, and all that sort of thing. But it's a lonely place.
Yeah. And also social media, you're comparing your life to somebody else.
You're comparing your life to somebody else.
It's not a true reflection of the real world.
And you can message people and you can comment on what they're doing, but it's not like we're having a conversation.
No.
You're not connecting with someone.
There's been studies around when someone dies, the level of depth of communication about sending somebody a condolence message via Facebook compared to actually sending somebody a letter.
Or a card.
The card. The level of depth and intent behind that.
Something physical that you can hold.
It's not there.
I think it's something, you know, if you write a card and you write a letter, you receive that card and you receive that letter, you look at it and you know the person at the other end has held that, has written that personally from their heart, and they've written what they feel on there, and then they've passed it to you, or it's been posted to you, and you open it, and that person is there with you.
Yeah.
Message on a screen doesn't do that.
It's active intent. I cut my neighbour's lawn for him. He cuts my lawn for me. And it's, you know, if I'm away, I'll cut it for these small acts mean so much, and it doesn't require a lot. And
you can say to people now, do you want me to keep an eye on the house while you're away? Oh, no, it's all right.
Yeah.
We got an alarm. We got a Ring doorbell. We'll be all right.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. I'm trying to make this connection with you.
You're missing the point.
You're missing the point. It's not me necessarily stopping you being burgled. It's me actually saying, can I help you?
Yeah, I'm here to support you.
Yeah.
I've got your back.
I can help. Can I help you? Can
Yeah.
you? And you know, it's I'll do this little thing for you, but I'll do something else as well.
Yeah.
You know, you could come to me, and we have lost a lot of that.
So do you think then these small acts will actually help repair society?
I think a lot of small acts of kindness and a lot of small acts of support. There's, you know, I believe in, you know, even something like you've got a young lady with a baby on her own, her husband's at work, she's really struggling. She takes this child out for a walk because this child won't stop crying. And you smile at her and say, good morning, are you okay? That makes a massive difference in her life.
I agree.
It's nothing big.
I agree.
You haven't got to go out your way. It's not going to cost you anything. It's just an act of kindness, an act of faith, if you want to call it that. It's just being a good human being. And just by doing that, you can lift someone's day so much.
So the next generation coming through, we spoke about this before, more on their phones.
Yeah.
There's less communication, there's less contact. They're not going for a beer in the pub.
No.
They're not going on dates, they're doing it online.
Clubs and societies are all closing, pubs are closing.
So it can seem quite doom and gloom. And I'm I'm very optimistic about society and about people, as I know you are as well. But like, what do we need to do? You've told us what we need to do to improve, but actually, what can we actually physically do now to ensure that things are going to be okay?
I think we need to lead by example, and I think those of us that believe this, what we're saying, not just talk about it, because everybody talks about, oh, so-and-so, the community's not like it was, kids of today are not like they were. But they don't do anything about it.
Get out there.
And I'm not saying go and start a youth club or anything like that. I'm saying, when the kids pass you in the street, say good morning to them.
Yeah.
And if they're doing something on the phone, say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And then have a conversation with them about that. And they might just put the phone down for a few seconds and have a conversation with you. But if they're there on their phone and you don't even say hello to them, they're not going to come off the phone.
Yeah, you're failing as well almost.
Yeah. So you've got to get out there and just do what human beings have always done. Connect, speak to each other, just a few words, just a good morning as you're walking down your garden path and you see your neighbour. Little old, the old lady next door who struggles with her bins, I'll take your bins down for you on a Tuesday.
Be together.
Yeah, I'll take your bins down for you. I'll bring them back. Don't you worry about it. Someone comes around and says, oh, I've got a real problem. Can you help? You might not be able to do the physical thing, but you can go around and say, look, say they've got a leak or something and it's flooded the house. You can always go around and help mop up. We can all mop up.
Yeah.
You haven't got to go around and do the plumbing.
Yeah.
That's not what they're asking you for. They're like...
acts of intent again.
It's intense, It's like, I'll come and help you mop up. I'll come and clean your house with you. Not a problem. I can't do anything major.
Yeah.
I can't sort the problem out for you, but I can help you to get through it.
No, brilliant, Gary. I think that's really good advice. And it's simple advice.
It is.
But it's something that, like you say, if we do more of us in society, I think you say these small acts can
I'm a great believer in ripples in a pond.
Yeah, create.
Small act that you do there. The thing is, people, again, society expects reward.
Yeah.
So you do something, you expect a reward.
Put it on Facebook. Yeah. I mow the neighbour's lawn.
Yeah. You expect a thank you.
Some likes.
Yeah. Or bring us a bottle of wine or something. Yeah. We expect a reward.
And again, it's even like now back to social media, like recording yourself, giving the homeless man 20 quid.
Yes.
It's like,
that's appalling.
Just stop it.
Appalling. And if anybody has an accident, we don't go and help them. We film it as a society.
Yeah.
But, it's not about needing a thanks for it.
Just do it.
You just do it.
Do the right things.
And actually, but what you do then ripples out. And that, it's like the pay it forward thing. You do something good for someone else.
Yeah.
They'll do something good for somebody else.
Yeah.
And they'll do some, and you may never see what happens to it.
Yeah.
But actually it doesn't matter.
No.
You're doing it for the right reasons. And if it happens to pay forward, brilliant. But if it doesn't pay forward, you've still done your little act of kindness.
You've lost nothing at all.
You've lost nothing. It's cost you nothing. And it's actually probably done your mental health a world of good.
Yeah.
To be able to say, have a chat with someone, say good morning to someone, to help them if they've sort of, the shopping's all fell up all over the floor and you're helping them to pick it up. There's a leak next door, you go and help them mop up. Those little acts of kindness are good for the person's mental health. They're also good for your mental health. Make you feel good. They, you think, oh, I did something good there.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant.
And you're not asking for thanks. You just,
It's for you.
I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
And then if you do it once, you want to do it again.
Yeah. Contagious.
And if we all do that, then we can get back to not the community that we were, but a new community in which we support each other and look after each other.
Yeah.
And we start looking at things in realistic terms, like going back to the basics of where we started. We all talk the same language. nobody's passed on, they've died.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're actually frank and open about that.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, we're not very frank and open with our feelings, our emotions, where we are in life.
But then
You don't want to spread it to everybody, but it is nice to have somebody that...
But people are talking about mental fitness now and mental health a lot more now, and actually making sure people do discuss their emotions. But are we just saying that? Are we actually doing it as well?
I think we're saying that. We're not discussing our emotions in any...
I agree with you. I do agree.
Depth.
I do agree.
I think we pay lip service to it. I think, it's, I'll be there for you. And we all do that. But when the time comes, it's a bit like, I don't know whether I want to do this.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying you've got to be a psychiatrist.
Just be present.
You just need to be there.
Be present.
Listen.
Yeah.
People don't even want advice. They just want someone to listen.
Yeah.
And to actually, to actually realise that they exist and that they've got problems and that, this is happening to them.
We had
it's not just a superficial relationship.
We had on the podcast a lady called Lucy Harrison who lost a brother in a road accident when she was young. And her friends weren't sure how to communicate with her about what was going on, but some of them basically said to her, let's just go to the cinema.
Yeah.
And they went to the cinema to watch a Disney film.
Just do normal things.
Just being present, silence, but just being there. And that's really powerful. That stayed with me.
And you'll hear people say, the worst thing about this, losing whoever, is that people avoid me.
Yeah.
People will cross over the road because they don't know what to say to me. And I don't particularly want them to say anything. I'd just like them to say, good morning, how are you?
Yeah.
And then I can say, yeah, I'm all right, or I'm not having such a good day. And then all they've got to say is, well, you look after yourself. You know where I am.
So my final two questions for you, Gary, are, what is the future of the church? And also, what is the future of Garry Ward?
The future of the church is very different, I think. It's going to be different to where we are now. It's got to be different. I'm a great believer, the church is struggling. And it is struggling, and I think it will continue to struggle. And I think it needs to change how it is in society. So I think it needs to stop thinking about keeping hundreds of buildings open and concentrate on actually connecting with people in a way. And I think, we are losing clergy left, right and centre. They're retiring, they're not being replaced, or there's a financial reason for it sometimes, not always, sometimes. So clergy numbers are dropping. The Archdeacon was telling me that the number of ordinands going into training this year is half of the number that it was last year.
Wow.
It'll probably pick up a little bit, but it just shows you there is a downward trend in people coming into ministry training. So it's then, what do you do to get somebody into parishes, communities, that will be that pastor, that person that they connect to? Because whether we like it or not, people don't connect to organisations, they connect to people. And if you've got nobody that is representing the church in that sense, then it's not going to survive.
So we're saying about having the right people.
Or having people.
The right people?
Hopefully the right people.
Can I say that?
Yeah, the right people, but in general, people. If you've got nobody there at all, you've got nobody to connect with.
Okay.
And hopefully you get the right people, and hopefully the church is good at discerning who is the right person for the right place.
Yeah.
And I think generally it tends to be okay with that. I get it wrong occasionally, but this happens.
It's life, yeah.
But I think in general, the church uses its resources of clergy in the right places where they feel they should be. The system works that way. But I actually think, we've got to think about how is the church going to connect when there aren't so many people in those roles to do that. Because, a church without a leader is not going to attract people. A church with a leader that is part of the community will attract people.
Can I just, one observation, we talk about social media now and that generation who are on social media and on their phones all the time. Is the church connected on social media?
It is connected.
Is that a ridiculous comment to make?
It's very much connected on social media. And I think without social media, there would be a greater disconnect because people wouldn't know what's going on. And it's simple things like we've got a Facebook page here and we put all the events and services and that are going on, the special services and that. And then there's a lady that does it for us and she'll just put Bible verses on.
Yeah.
And it's things like that and just for people, or nice prayers for people to read.
So it is happening then?
So it is happening.
Yeah.
I'm vicar of a online church.
Oh, wow, okay.
I was asked if I'd oversee this online church. And they're a sort of diasporic bunch of people from all over that come together a couple of times a week. They have some discussion groups, worship groups, that sort of thing. I do every Friday I'll do a sort of prayer and discussion group. That's my sort of input for it, because obviously Sunday I'm rather busy.
Yeah.
So there are leaders within it that look after it, but I've got oversight of it. And we're looking at the moment, legally, how does this fit in with the church?
Yeah.
And I'm going to have a meeting with the diocesan registrar to see how legally we can make this part of the church.
Interesting.
And I think we need to get to grips with that rather quickly, because I think that's going to be a big thing. And the church that Community Arc it's called, the church I'm with, a lot of people there either physically can't get to church, or they've had terrible experiences at church and don't want to go to church, or they just want to try something different.
Yeah.
So they come online and it's a lot freer and it's a lot open. And it's very faithful. And I think the church has got to get to grips with the idea that this is something that it can
Fascinating.
connect with.
But I'm not surprised that you're involved in it, though. So, fantastic.
So I think that the church has got to get to grips with this, how it's going to, because it's part of the future.
It needs to work.
It needs to work. It needs to work. What we need to do is stop concentrating maybe so much on these.
Yeah.
You do need places of worship. You do need places where people can come and connect and meet and be together.
Central point.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You need those places, but you don't need quite so many.
Yeah.
And so what you need then is, that's when you start to make your connections in the community.
Adapt and evolve.
And do, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm a great believer that if the church does die a death, for want of a better way of putting it, that it will be resurrected as something different and hopefully will connect more with people. Because let's face it, we are a resurrection people in the church. Jesus was resurrected to make life better for us. Therefore, if this church dies, then it can be resurrected as something that will be different and better. And so I'm not a great worrier of,
the future.
The future. I think there will be a church. It'll be a completely different form of church, probably. I might not see it in my lifetime, but I'm sure it'll be a completely different form of church. And I think, we need to start looking seriously at how this different form of church is going to be.
Yeah.
And how it works in the future. Is it going to be a sort of a lot more online churches and a lot less physical churches? Is it going to be an equal amount? Are the physical churches going to come back into play in a big style, particularly if we can sort of get it down to a manageable amount?
Yeah.
With costs and everything. I don't know. I honestly don't know, but I haven't lost hope in it.
No, of course not. And I think we've highlighted the importance of the church. That's what we've highlighted, not just from a religious point, but from a faith point and a community and connection point. Yeah. Finally then, your future. My future. I'm hopefully retiring. I say hopefully, not hopefully as in I'm going to leave the church behind and, oh, thank heavens for that. I am hopefully retiring because my health is not good. Yeah.
And I would like to have some time before my health gets too bad to do other things in life. I'm probably not going to have a permission to officiate license. So the future for me is a sort of open book.
Yeah.
There will be God and faith very much involved in that, but where that goes, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a different chapter to me. I'll still be a priest because I was ordained, but I won't be an active member of clergy.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be volunteering, doing things, or maybe doing something else completely. You know, I might go and volunteer at the local charity shop, local charity, like a wildlife centre, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna. What I'm gonna do first is once I've retired, I'm gonna have a break, reassess, and then see where God sends me.
No, brilliant, Gary. Well, I think I can speak on behalf of the Bridge North, Clovelly area. What you've done for the community, you have created connection.
Thank you.
So thank you, Gary, for what you do, for what you continue to do prior to retiring. And I think our plan now is to go for a beer in your pub.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks, Gary.
Excellent.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching the episode. Again, a big thanks to our sponsors. And as we talked about in the episode, take a look at the interview with Grace Jevons right here.